What happens when the stories we tell about ourselves collide with the facts of our biology? When language, law, and identity pull in opposite directions, which one should society follow? Helen Joyce's Trans, When Ideology Meets Reality, doesn't just ask these questions, it throws them like a gauntlet. It's a book that stands at the fault line of one of today's most emotionally charged debates, where empathy, science, politics, and philosophy all intersect. Joyce's thesis is unsettling to some, illuminating to others, but undeniably consequential. As she puts it early in the book, there are few more dangerous illusions than to believe you can change reality by changing words. Before diving in, it helps to know the messenger. Helen Joyce is not a polemicist by profession. She's a mathematician turned journalist, a former editor at The Economist, and someone who has long written about demography, data, and the meaning of measurement. That background matters because Trans is obsessed with definitions. Joyce treats words like data points, things to be examined, not merely felt. And she argues that Western institutions have blurred the meaning of sex and gender to the point where policy itself has become incoherent. She begins with a striking claim. A new belief system has taken hold, one that insists that how you feel about yourself is what you are, and that everyone else must believe it too. The book is not an attack on individuals, she insists, but an exploration of how an ideology, gender self-identification, has reshaped medicine, education, law, and language in less than a generation. Joyce's core argument can be distilled into one statement. Sex is real, immutable, and politically important. Gender identity is subjective, fluid, and personal. Confusing the two is not compassion, it's chaos. She contends that while society should respect individuals' identities, it's dangerous to build public policy on what she calls a belief without boundaries. In her view, replacing biological sex with self-declared gender in official contexts, from prisons to sports to census forms, effectively erases the ability to speak meaningfully about women as a sex class. If the word woman no longer names a biological reality, she asks, what happens to the political movement built upon it? Joyce traces how the concept of trans evolved. In the mid-20th century, a tiny number of adults sought medical transition to alleviate intense gender dysphoria, a distress recognized by psychiatrists like Harry Benjamin. These cases were exceptional and heavily regulated. But beginning in the 1990s and accelerating in the 2010s, gender identity became detached from medical diagnosis and reframed as an innate truth of the self. Joyce attributes this to a fusion of postmodern philosophy, online activism, and institutional eagerness to appear inclusive. She writes, "What began as a treatment for a rare condition has become an identity claim anyone can make and demand validation for." This shift, she argues, turned the personal into the political and the subjective into public policy. Joyce dedicates entire chapters to what she calls institutional capture. She documents, often with statistics and case studies, how medical guidelines in the UK, US, and parts of Europe shifted toward affirmation rather than exploration. Children and teens, she notes, can now access puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones based largely on self-reported gender distress. "We used to watch and wait. Now we affirm and prescribe," she writes. She questions whether these decisions are truly evidence-based or driven by fear of being labeled transphobic. Citing whistleblower reports from clinics like the UK's Tavistock Centre, Joyce argues that the rush to medicalize gender-distressed youth is a mass social experiment conducted without informed consent. In education, she examines how schools encourage children to explore gender identity, sometimes without parental involvement. She asks, what does it do to a child's development when their discomfort with puberty is reinterpreted as evidence they were born in the wrong body? And in law, Joyce is sharply critical of self-ID legislation which allows individuals to change legal sex based on declaration alone. A legal fiction, she warns, is harmless until it collides with real rights, like those that depend on sex. Perhaps the book's most heated sections concern women's rights. Joyce argues that sex-segregated spaces, shelters, sports, prisons, exist because biological sex matters for safety and fairness. She writes, if identity alone grants access, then women lose the ability to set boundaries at all. She cites examples of male-bodied prisoners housed in women's facilities and female athletes competing against trans women, using them to illustrate how a principle of inclusion can sometimes result in exclusion of the group it was meant to protect. Joyce's language here is deliberately provocative, but also strategic. She wants readers to confront the tension between kindness and consequence. How far can inclusion stretch before it stops being equitable? Another fascinating part of Trans explores language. Joyce dissects how terms like assigned at birth, gender identity, and cisgender subtly reframe reality. To say someone was assigned female at birth implies that sex is an arbitrary label, not an observable fact. She views this linguistic shift as not merely semantic, but ideological, reshaping how people think. Language, for Joyce, is both battlefield and mirror. She even suggests that corporations, universities, and NGOs have adopted gender ideology as a moral signal, a kind of institutional virtue currency. When everyone must declare their pronouns, silence becomes the new heresy. Philosophical undercurrent, reality, and belief. Throughout the book, Joyce wrestles with a timeless philosophical tension. Can belief make something real? She likens gender ideology to faith, deeply felt, often comforting, but unverifiable. You may believe that humans can change sex, but you cannot make it true. This isn't mockery. It's a warning about what happens when empirical categories become moral litmus tests. Her argument echoes Enlightenment principles that compassion must coexist with truth and that policy must rest on material evidence, not emotion alone. Joyce's prose is crisp, unsentimental, and data-driven. She cites court cases, medical studies, and government policies. Her tone often walks a line between analytical and polemical, sharp enough to sting, but structured enough to compel. She writes with moments of genuine empathy, too. Those who transition deserve dignity and safety, she acknowledges. But so do the rest of us, who wish to live in a world where words still mean something. That tension between sympathy and skepticism runs through every chapter. The reaction to Trans was electric. In the UK, it topped nonfiction lists and was chosen by The Times and The Spectator as a book of the year. Critics on the left, however, accused it of reinforcing stereotypes or ignoring trans voices. Publishers Weekly wrote that Joyce's refusal to engage with trans experiences undermines her authority. Meanwhile, writers like Kathleen Stock and Andrew Doyle praised it as a necessary corrective to institutional groupthink. Even among feminists, it divided opinion. Some saw it as reclaiming women's language, others feared it risked weaponizing feminism against another vulnerable group. And that tension, the impossibility of pleasing everyone, may be the truest sign of how charged this debate has become. Broader implications: a society at a crossroads. By the book's conclusion, Joyce widens her lens. The question she suggests isn't just about trans rights or women's spaces, it's about how societies define truth in an age of identity. We are building laws on feelings, she writes, and feelings, however sincere, are the most unstable foundation imaginable. She warns that policy divorced from biological fact risks eroding trust in institutions, from medicine to academia. Yet, she also acknowledges that compassion for trans individuals must remain non-negotiable. Her proposed way forward, she argues, is open debate. Silencing disagreement, she writes, is not kindness. It's cowardice dressed as virtue. As your video draws to a close, you might let your voice soften. What if the truth about sex and gender is more complicated and more fragile than either side wants to admit? Can we protect both the dignity of trans people and the integrity of language? How do we balance empathy with evidence when both seem to demand different answers? And in the end, when ideology meets reality, who should yield? Helen Joyce's Trans isn't comfortable reading, nor should it be. It forces us to confront questions that cut to the core of identity, science, and freedom of thought. You don't have to agree with her to feel the gravity of what she's asking. Are we changing the world or just changing the words?